Hello and welcome back to the A Better Computer podcast. My name is Matt, and today I want to talk about two things. The first is Tim Cook stepping down as CEO, but not specifically that, but a critique that I've seen thrown around by some pretty big voices in the Apple punditry that I think are just completely wrong, and I do not believe. So I wanted to kind of address that. And the second thing, a quickie at the end, I wanted to show off a new feature in Quick Reads, my new Read Later service, which kind of illustrates how I am trying to treat this as a good tool for both writers and readers of web content. So let's talk about Tim Cook first. The critique that I'm talking about is basically he was Steve Ballmer for Apple, right? Steve Ballmer at Microsoft made all the numbers go up, but he made the products terrible, kind of just ruined the company and made Satya Nadella, when he took over, reshape the entire company to get them back on track. And I don't think that's the case at all in this situation. No, Tim Cook is not from the product world, but I think Tim Cook believes in making great products. I think he's excited when Apple makes really great products. I think he cares about it. But no, I guess he probably doesn't have the specific skills to be the quote-unquote product guy leading the company. But he has people under him. I don't think that the CEO must be a product guy. This is a thing that I think Apple fans say without actually really thinking about, but I think it all comes down to what they actually delivered. And I think that it could be argued that Apple today has the greatest product lineup they've ever had. Their Macs, their iPads, their iPhones, their watches, they're all outstanding. And a lot of those started under Tim Cook. And so I want to go through some of the products that literally did not exist until Tim Cook took over. All of these are at least 4 years into his tenure, so we can't give Steve Jobs credit for these anymore. And let's just kind of go through them, and I'll kind of illustrate things. I do think, for what it's worth, that Tim Cook has an unbelievably hard compare, as they say in the business world. It's a hard compare when Steve Jobs is the CEO that came before you, who is widely considered one of, if not the greatest tech CEOs of all time, and who passed away just months after he left the job. And it's just this combination of admiration, mythology, and nostalgia, just all combining into, oh my God, Steve Jobs was incredible. Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to have Steve Jobs around today, doing interviews, still talking. Like, who knows? Sometimes these old guys get a little crazy. So who knows what have happened? But there's a lot of mythology around Steve Jobs. So let's talk about the products that came to be in the Tim Cook era, and I think tell a very different picture to this idea that Apple has horrible products now because Tim Cook is a bad leader. So first is Apple Pay. Apple Pay came out in 2014. It is awesome. I guess it's 3 years into his tenure, Tim Cook's tenure. But Apple Pay is awesome. Apple Pay is great. Yes, it kind of builds on the industry standard tap to pay, but it did so in a way that made it very friendly to people and brought it into the US market in a way it simply hadn't at that point. And it's actually done so well that it has convinced a lot of people who know nothing about payments that it's magic and it's perfectly secure in ways that nothing else is. Anyway, if you ask someone to explain Apple Pay, I almost guarantee you they will explain it wrong because there's some mythology here too. But it's great. The year after that, Apple released the Apple Watch, which obviously was a little shaky at the start, but at this point is an enormously successful product. It dominates not just the smartwatch market, but the watch market in general. I think it's still the best-selling watch, just period. I'm wearing one right now. I tried not wearing one, and I had to go back. I could only make it a few days because it really brings a ton of value to me. So I think the Apple Watch, big win for him. The iPad Pro, I kind of debated putting this on here. Like, if you like iPads, then you love the iPad Pro. The iPad Pro brought us the Apple Pencil. It kind of brought the iPad into more of a serious computer rather than kind of this third device. And yeah, I mean, I think it also correlates with the dark days of the Mac, where Apple kind of thought the iPad was the future and the iPad or the Mac was going to kind of fade away, but that obviously didn't happen. So I don't know. But the iPad Pro, real big innovation on the iPad. I guess it's kind of just a bigger one, but it started down the path of these really high-end iPads that people still really love today. AirPods. AirPods are awesome. I think the AirPods are great. I think the AirPods Pro are maybe the best product in general in tech released in the last decade, I think they're super awesome. And they just, it is important to remember that when these released in 2016, wireless earbuds were not mainstream. Most of them were like wired things that had terrible battery life, that didn't pair well, and they leveled up wireless earbuds in a way that is truly spectacular and is an outstanding product. People love AirPods. They are the sort of thing where for a lot of people, if they lost their AirPods like right now, they would be at a store today making sure they got a new pair. Like they are super, super successful, super awesome product. There's the iPhone 10. This was 2017. The iPhone 10, really great phone, really cool phone. And I would say this kind of kicked off this whole generation of devices that we're still in today. This kind of no home screen with a notch and then a dynamic island at the top. And I mean, look, I think the iPhone XS was a bit of a flop, and the iPhone 12 didn't have great battery life. But like, especially from the iPhone 11 Pro on, iPhones have been outstanding. They haven't had issues. They are produced at an enormous scale, and they just deliver like clockwork, and they continue to be some of the absolute best phones on the market. It's why I continue to use one. It's why you watching this in the US especially almost certainly use one. And yeah, the iPhone is absolutely awesome. Obviously introduced initially under Steve Jobs, but has evolved quite a bit since then, and a lot of that was under Tim Cook's leadership. Then we have Apple Silicon, which this was 2020 when this started coming out. I guess Apple Silicon started before that, but I'm thinking, I guess, about the M1, the Apple Silicon Mac transition, which completely revitalized the Mac, changed a lot for expectations for personal computers in a way that I think we don't really appreciate day to day when we're using our M1, M2, M3, M4, M5 now Macs. Like, these things are outstanding, and they push the industry forward in a very meaningful way. And it's to the point where, like I mentioned earlier, I think the Mac lineup today is the best Mac lineup that's ever existed. There is a cheap Mac that rules. The MacBook Neo is cheaper than any Mac laptop they've ever made, and it's awesome. There's the MacBook Air, there's the MacBook Pro. I would recommend those to basically anyone who wants a Mac at those price points. There's the Mac Studio, there's the Mac Mini, there's even the iMac is a little weirdo, but like if that's what you want, if you want an all-in-one, I can recommend that. There's no Mac in the lineup I can't recommend, and that's awesome. Like, they are all outstanding computers. And Apple Silicon is a big part of why that's the case. So was Tim Cook a product guy in the same way that Steve Jobs was? No, but I do think that it's worth noting that while none of these are the iPhone, which is, again, by some measures, the greatest consumer product of all time, these are meaningful things, right? Apple Pay is huge and beloved. The Apple Watch is huge and mostly beloved. The iPad Pro, people are all over the place on this one. AirPods, hugely popular, widely beloved. The iPhone, hugely popular, widely beloved. Apple Silicon, same deal. Revitalized the Mac, very, very popular, set a new benchmark for the industry. So do they have problems? Sure. Am I annoyed that there are ads in more places? Am I annoyed with App Store rules? Am I annoyed? There were some product failures, right? The Vision Pro, an absolute flop. Maybe they'll pull this up somehow, but it's an absolute miss right now. The Apple Car obviously never actually came to fruition. They had to cancel that project. Who knows how AI will turn out, right? Like, so far it's been fine, but Apple has failed at doing their own model. Now they're partnering with Google. But for what it's worth, all the big companies making these foundation models that are the leading ones, the flagship ones, they're hemorrhaging money, right? ChatGPT from OpenAI is like the biggest success story in terms of users in history, but that company is hemorrhaging money because it costs way more to serve that product than it actually they're actually making back from it. So yeah, I mean, we'll see how it plays out. Maybe it is great that Apple is selling the product that you use ChatGPT on while they make the margin and ChatGPT just hemorrhages money. Who knows? We'll see how that turns out. But I would argue that it will be on a time scale long enough that it'll be John Ternus's fault if it doesn't go right. So yeah, just wanted to touch on that because, I'm happy to criticize Tim Cook when I think it's warranted, but I don't think criticizing the products that Apple released during his tenure is a fair criticism, especially when you're comparing it to Steve Ballmer. Like, that's crazy. So the second thing I want to show is quick reads, which I'm not going to do a full demo. I did a whole video on this. I wrote a blog post about it. What I want to show is how it handles paywalled articles, because this is something a few people have asked me. How does it work with paywalled articles? So let's take a look. So this is a paid post on my blog, Birchtree. I'm signed into my own website, and here it is. So let me go ahead and just copy the URL, go back to quick reads, add it, and paste it in. So if I save it here we go. There's the article, and this is for paying subscribers only. Shoot. So it's not here. Let me go ahead and delete this. And, well, does that mean it doesn't work with paywalled articles? Yes, it does. So we're going to go back to the main site. So this is where it is. I've got it loaded up. And if I use the browser extension to save it, and I go back to quick reads, now you can see it's 5 minutes, and there it is. It's all here. So how does this work? Basically, I wanted to make a system that worked for both writers and readers. As a reader, I want to be able to read the things that I subscribe to in my read later service, right? I need to be able to do that because I may not have time right now, whatever. And so I want to be able to do that so I can go ahead and save it, and it saves nicely. However, I don't want this to be some sort of paywall loophole that people use to read things that they didn't actually pay to access, right? I believe in supporting the creators who put their stuff behind a paywall. I think you should be allowed to do that, and people should respect that. And basically, what you can do with some other services that I've seen in the past is they cache the article content between users. So if the same user, or if like two users save the same URL, if someone saved in the full article is there, when the second person comes to save it, the service just goes, oh, I've already saved that. Here's the full text. You get it now. And so it made it so that you could get access to paywalled stuff. I'm already seeing a few of you most likely hearing this and being like, oh, shoot, I got to go use that service because that sounds great. And you can if you want, but that is not how I want my business to operate. So when you save an article, if you're logged in and you use the browser extension, or if you're on iOS and use the share sheet button from a browser window, it will pass in all of the article content into quick reads. If you save it from here, it just pulls it from the server and it pulls the public URL. So if the public can see it, you can just add it from the interface. It'll work great. If the public cannot see it, then you need to go to the page yourself, load it, and then save it, and it'll actually save the full content. So just a thing to know. But yeah, that's how it works. I think it's how it should work, and I think it's the right thing to do. So that's what I did. And that is it for me today. Thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.